For bingo, I was never successful at bingo, and I was that I was that child that just yelled bingo to be disruptive to the entire
I could totally see
crew.
that.
Yeah, yeah, because I just wanted to what does it feel like to win?
This is On Call.
Wow, this would be really cool to just wear scrubs all the time. Then you don't have to think about what you're going to wear to work.
That's awesome.
We're here to answer your questions.
We can sit down and discuss all. Wait, I gotta go. I'm on call.
Wait, you're on call? I thought I was on call.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the episode of On Call with April and Alicia. I'm Alicia,
I'm April.
and we're happy to have you here. April, happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday.
I want to actually want to share something special with you.
Okay, let me hear
A
it.
little gift. I got a little gift this weekend. You know, I like a
Oh.
little control, and my children gifted me with a gavel, like a judge gavel. So
I thought
can't
you
show it
said
to you.
a
I'm not-
gabble, and I was like, "What's
No.
a gabble?"
I don't know. It's something from Fraggle Rock. I don't know. I think it doesn't exist. Like a judge gavel. My children are very intellectual arguers, and they provide great debate. But at the end of the day, I always drop the hammer. So this weekend, my oldest, well, not my oldest, but my second oldest daughter, Juliana, gave me a gavel so I could rule officially in the household. So the gavel sits in my
Because it was
kitchen.
not official until then.
It's not official till the judge drops a hammer, right?
I see.
And so it's been a very obnoxious weekend for us in the Shepherd household, and we are gaveling through the weekend. So I will let you know through this episode what I do agree with and what I don't agree with, possibly with my gavel. But that was my weekend. That was your weekend.
That's awesome that she gave you that gift. I love that.
She did. It's real. And for anybody listening, I promise I'll provide a picture. It's great. It really does have like a very authoritative feel to it. So it's great.
That's awesome. She cracks me up. My weekend was good. We had a kind of chill weekend. We went and played bingo on Saturday night for a fundraiser.
Bingo.
Which was fun. We actually, 3 of the kids won, and then we won this huge, like a raffle for this huge gift basket, actually for Baxter. It was like a bunch of
Baxter
dog
the
treats
dog.
and
How's
dog
Baxter
toys.
doing?
And so it made Baxter's day.
For bingo, I was never successful at bingo. And I was that child that just yelled bingo to be disruptive to the entire
I could totally see
crew.
that.
Yeah, because I just wanted to what does it feel like to win?
It is exciting to win.
It is. What did the girls win?
They won one. So they had this big table of things they could pick from. So one won like some sort of slime. The other one won those things that you like throw at the wall and they'll stick and then they crawl down the wall. And then the other one won kinetic sand.
Oh, all we're missing is a slinky.
I know. There's all
Everyone
these great
loves a
toys to
slinky.
put sand and marks all over walls and houses. It was great.
Nice. Well, it sounds like a good weekend. The weather's good there. Or
It's a little chillier today. It was nice
tolerable?
over the weekend. Yeah, we had outdoor soccer practice. It was not bad, but today's a little chillier, like in the low 40s.
It's kind of been like rainy here. I say admittedly low mood and just definitely I can tell I'm lacking some vitamin D here in Cincinnati. I tend to kind of dive into my phone a little bit and start reading a little bit more, and actually came across the blog that you wrote that was actually talking about uncomfortable conversations. And I think that's a good segue for our conversation today about uncomfortable conversations. So I want to ask you a little bit about this blog because you shared this. I actually think it was really brilliant. All of our firsts as clinicians our first time having that first conversation with a patient that is going to die from a diagnosis, or first time having to talk to a family for a patient that has expired. What inspired you to create this post?
Well, I like to blog every now and then, so I try to do one a few times a year. And as I was thinking about when to write, for some reason that just came to mind. And I don't know if it's because as leaders, we're in uncomfortable conversations a lot, right? So
Yeah.
whether we're giving, hard feedback to somebody or getting feedback or presenting, on a controversial topic or something like that, we always do it. But then, so then as I was thinking about that, I thought, this is actually kind of an evolution that we do throughout our whole career, like, right? Like we have these situations that are uncomfortable, and usually it's the
Mhm.
first time that you encounter it that is really uncomfortable or can be
Mhm.
stressful. And then you sort of embrace it as you sort of learn over time. I think that that it's actually a learning experience, right? And
Right.
an opportunity to help somebody else. And so I think I just thought about that kind of as my evolution of my roles and how that sort of happened in every role with every, new thing as it comes about. So,
Yeah. And
and
I think what was like really cool about that was, for some of the people listening, we may think of these as like crucial conversations, but uncomfortable conversations, challenging conversations. What I loved about your blog specifically was that you wrapped it up as saying these things were really hard, but at the end of it, they made me like a stronger or more seasoned provider, these experiences. So don't be afraid of these things, because they're going to make you a better person or a better provider, a better clinician, a better whatever, fill in the blank. And I love that concept, truly. I just am curious, when you think of like how do you define what is an uncomfortable conversation? What is a crucial conversation? What do you mean when you define that?
yeah, I think of it as a conversation where there's, high stakes involved. So there's some sort of
Hmm.
kind of big decision or some sort of high stake that you're looking for. There's an opportunity, and often there is differing opinions about whatever it is you're talking about. And then there's emotions involved. So there's usually also strong emotions attached to those opinions. And so what happens then is that, everybody who's involved in the conversation brings those differing opinions attached with those very strong emotions. And
Mm.
if you don't approach it correctly, or kind of cautiously sometimes, then it can kind of blow up, right? Like you can
Right.
disagree. Kind of nature works against us a little bit because we get that adrenaline rush because you're like stressed out, right? You can get caught off guard. So you can have this like knee jerk reaction. Um, and then sometimes like our reactions that we have are a little bit actually self defeating, right? So we'll be having a conversation about something, and the way that we react to that can actually perpetuate the behavior of the other person. And you get
Mm.
caught in this like circle, right? So,
Yeah.
um, it, so if they're not approached correctly, it can really go bad quick.
I think that's right, April. And I think about when we think about some of the uncomfortable conversations we have, they're not just limited to healthcare. While this is a healthcare podcast, we're talking about patients, we're talking about our experiences. This makes me think about my challenges in having conversations with my children, personal issues in our lives that we're going through, parenting, things with my parents, um, things with friends. Just I think everywhere it's challenging to have some of these conversations. It's just not limited to healthcare. So I guess maybe for me, some of my top challenges are, if I keep it in the milieu of healthcare, one of my top challenges is having a conversation with a patient and or family whose belief system doesn't match with mine. And that's really hard
It is
because
hard.
I'm really driving from a system that I believe what I think is the best for my patient, and they believe what they think is the best for them. I'm coming with some experience. They're not coming with experience on their half. How do you have those conversations?
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think one of the things I think it's important that we do is really kind of stick to the facts, right? Like of why, because there's some reason that we're
Yes.
recommending what we're recommending, right? Like we've probably had cases similar to the past and see how the outcome was. We've looked up, or are familiar with evidence-based medicine, right? In the literature of what is proven to work for things. And so there is a reason behind why we're recommending what we're recommending. And so I think that always presenting those facts and the why behind things goes a long way. But the other big thing is you have to listen to them too, because you have to understand why their viewpoint is why it is, right? Like, are they scared, or did they see somebody go through the same treatment and it didn't work, or, like why they're coming from where they are coming from. And then just, once all the viewpoints are out there, then you can settle into the facts and develop a plan moving forward that everybody's comfortable with.
I think that lends to the concept of meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And that actually takes skill.
It does.
To meet someone, because you're actually saying, hey, self, this is your belief system, but I'm going to abandon this for a moment and I'm going to jump to somebody else's belief system and try to meet them where they are, or at least communicate in a way that maybe I wouldn't either want or prefer or usually do, but maybe the best for this outcome.
Yeah. Well, and also sometimes people need time to process. So it might be that they heard it one time and it wasn't exactly what they were anticipating, and maybe they're nervous or maybe they're scared of the outcome, and so they need time to process that. And then when you come back again a second time after they've had a little bit of chance to get over that initial shock, and then you can say, okay, let's now sit down and really talk this through of why this is what we're recommending. And that kind of goes for everything, right? I mean, you mentioned kids, sometimes they're kids, right? So they don't always understand what we're explaining at first. And so sometimes you have to talk to them a few times to really get them to understand where we're coming from as a parent.
Yeah,
sometimes it's,
you have to accept that they're never going to get it.
Right. Well, and sometimes it takes them. Yeah. Well, and sometimes it takes them like you giving in to them a little bit if it's not a big deal, right? Like you got to pick your battles, right? So if you say, put your coat on, it's cold outside today, and they want to fight with you about that, and then they come home from school and they say, yep, I froze at recess today, Mom, you were right.
or I couldn't go to recess today. That's usually Maddox's story is, this is my son who denies the fact that it might be -7 degrees outside and he wants to wear shorts and a short sleeve shirt and maybe just like a very benign hoodie. And he goes to school and we have this fight in the morning. You need a jacket? I don't need a jacket. You need a jacket? I don't need a jacket. Okay, fine. Then he comes back and goes, I need a jacket because I wasn't able to go to recess today because the teachers wouldn't let me outside. Sometimes you just got to let the world happen the way it happens. I get that. This whole subject reminds me of a moment I was working for a different employer, and we had a third party like consulting service come in to our hospitalist team and say, hey, you guys aren't really doing well at having difficult conversations with patients. So it actually reminds me of these scenarios that were created for us. And we would get these, we'd have a facilitator and they would say, this is a 33-year-old patient who was diagnosed with breast cancer and she's dying, and you have to have this conversation. And our entire team, with the exception of those who were still at the hospital, obviously treating patients, were present. And it was fascinating to me to watch my team try to have these conversations. And I don't know if it was like the stress of maybe the facilitator being there or whatever, but how hard it was for us to talk about when we believe medicine fails. And the reality is we can't keep people alive forever. And but on the back end of it, it's like we feel like we fail if we can't save them. So I would sit there, and I was sitting there just truly in disbelief at how challenging it was for some of my colleagues to have this, fake conversation with this actor patient. But then several of us that could get up and just maybe articulate clearly because we were comfortable. We became comfortable with uncomfortable. It's just like it's interesting to me how we struggle with that conversation in general, whether it's about diagnosis, like you said, like whether it's about like life expectancy, whether it's about, whether it's our kids or whatever, we all kind of have our struggling points.
Yeah, it's true.
But
and I don't know.
Had that? Like, have you, I'm sure I could think of a million things, right? Of conversations I've had that have gone way left and those that may have gone right. But do you have one that you can think of that you've had to have a crucial conversation or a challenging conversation with one of your patients, families, friends, whatever?
Yeah, it's funny that you actually bring that up and how hard it is for some people to have them because so going to get a little vulnerable here, but a few years ago, my grandfather was sick and he was in the hospital and prognosis was not good. And, he had been admitted and he came home and, just being a clinician, right. And seeing what happened and knowing his diagnoses, like I knew that he didn't have long left. Right. So I went and visited in he lived in out of state. So we went up so that I could visit, and my husband and my kids didn't go. I said, I just need time with him. So I'm going to go by myself. So I was sitting there with him and my grandmother, and I was telling him, just kind of hearing about the hospital course and, what they had said the plan was for him. And in talking to him, he really didn't have a clear plan, like from what he was relaying to me. Right. And obviously I wasn't there in the hospital with him, so I don't know what conversations were had when. And then my grandmother brings up the word hospice and how they had said, no, we don't want hospice and we're not ready for that. And all these things. And it turned into me sort of having that conversation with them about hospice and what it was and, all the palliative care options and, and his prognosis and, what, it kind of just turned into like, I asked him like, well, what is it that you want? Like, what do you want out of your the time that you have left? And,
what do you want?
Yeah. Like,
right.
Do you want to go back to the hospital? Do you want to be at home? Like, do you want to prolong this? Like all these things. And like, by the end of our conversation, like he was like, no, he's like, I just want to be comfortable and I just want to be here at home, with my wife, right? Like who's my grandmother. And it was really hard to do that because, he's somebody that I care dearly for, right? Like he's been my grandfather my whole life.
Sure.
But, at the end of the conversation, she was like, okay, I'll call back and, have hospice come out. And a few weeks later, he passed at home extremely peacefully with hospice and my grandmother by his side, right? And just being able to do that for him as my loved one, but also as a clinician, thinking of a patient, it just was really meaningful for me to be able to be there for him in that moment. But it did made me think at the time, like, what was the conversations that had been had in the hospital? Was it that it wasn't relayed well to them? Is it that they were in shock and they just couldn't understand what was being said to them? Right. And maybe by the time they sat down with somebody that is one of their loved ones in the comfort of their own home where they could really understand what's being said, maybe that was the difference. I don't know. But yeah, regardless, it was really an honor to be able to do that for him at the end of his life.
And I think those the conversations are hard and none of us can deny that. Our job is to, I guess in essence, we're here to save lives.
Right.
So it's really hard to reconcile with death. And
it is.
Specifically, just the nuances of that conversation. The reality is we're all going to die, and I hate to be so morbid, but we're not, none of us
it's the truth.
Here alive. So, so whatever that calling is for us, however that lands, whatever, I am fully committed to my patients leading me and what that looks like for them and not what it looks like for me and not necessarily my belief system. And that's the hardest part for me is to separate what my belief system is or my foundation is, and trying to adapt to what theirs is. So
Well, yeah, and you have to
what
keep
are
your
ways
emotions
we
out
can
of
do
it.
that? Yeah, like I was
Yeah.
going to say, I was going to ask you, like, for everybody, even myself included, like, I could always use a refresher. What are great ways or decent ways that we can have these conversations and
Yeah, I think there's
facilitate
some,
them?
some
Go
tips
ahead.
or
Yeah.
steps, that can help. But I mean, the one thing I think is, when you go into it, to just know kind of in your heart, like what you really want and like what the big picture goal is, right? So if I think about a patient who has a poor prognosis and I'm going into that conversation, like what is it that I want? I want them to
Yeah.
get what they want, right? Like I want them to live whatever life they have left the way that they want to live that. And so going in to sort of think about the big picture of what it is your goal is for that conversation. And then the second thing is, we already talked about this a little bit, but like stick to the facts, right? Like avoid judgments when you're presenting information, just sticking to the facts and presenting them, kind of as they are.
Right.
Really, I think helps people understand that why. And then really making it a safe space, right? So
Safe.
be present, like no distractions, avoid kind of phrases that, can kind of upset people, like if you're talking to a colleague or somebody who works for you and you're giving feedback and using generalized statements like you always do this, like those are not things to do, right? Like you need to
Right.
present the facts, but also create an environment where them asking for help and them asking questions is welcomed and encouraged by you. And then also listening to their side of it, right? Like with an open mind, like listening to what they have to say, really processing it before you then react. But all of that will then kind of fuel that discussion so that at the end you can figure out your action items and you can have a plan to ensure that you carry out whatever those steps are, for whatever the
Yeah.
conversation is. But I would say that one of the biggest things, and it is hard, is to sort of adjust like as you're going into that conversation, like adjusting your mindset so that your emotions are in control, because there's going to be emotions on both sides.
It's so hard.
And so if you can control, it's really hard. And I think, obviously some of us are better at it than others, but it's just, it takes time. I think you have to sort of disconnect a little bit,
Yeah.
and really kind of keep
Detach a
yourself in
bit.
check. Yeah.
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 It's a perspective thing. And that's what I've learned is, the way I view life isn't the way necessarily you view life or my patient or whoever views it. And so what's a value to me might not be a value to you. But
Right.
my job as a clinician is to honor your value.
Right.
And that, I think it's like a challenge. It truly
It
is
is.
like, it's like ninja therapy. It is, it's really challenging. So I don't think we're suggesting it's as easy as just, hey, here's like 1, 2, 3 people, here's what you should do and life will be easier. It's a practice.
It
It
is.
becomes a practice. It's a constant art. It is a failed conversation that you've had with one patient that you then take from that conversation, or even, let's just say, coworker, colleague,
Kid.
whatever.
As a parent, probably
Child,
all of my
yes.
conversations haven't been the best with my kids, but
No.
you live and you learn, and you move on and you say sorry when you were wrong, right? I mean, it's just
Correct. I came
that's how
from the
you do
era
it.
of do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
And as shocking that anybody would imagine that I'm challenging why you're not doing the same thing you're telling me to do. But I was that kid that my parents would just say, because I said so. And I would go, but why? But you don't do that, it is challenging. You constantly have to adjust, but you have to understand the person you're talking to. You have to meet their perspective. And that requires really like significant agility for either you're a clinician, you're a parent, you're a friend, a coworker, whatever you are, however you're showing up in these conversations. It's agility in perspective. And perspective's just a really tricky thing. We know what we know in our lives because of our experiences. And so we have a perspective based off our experiences, but if we can really accept that other people have similar perspectives or other perspectives, and we, like, I don't know, like, we try to just meet them in the middle, or try to see their line of sight, it helps. I know
Yeah.
it sounds very like, "Bleh," like
No, but it's the
hollow
truth. I mean,
platitude-y, you know?
yeah,
Like,
but I mean, and all
everybody
of
gets
the,
along, hold hands, the world gets together. But that's not what I'm saying. It's just truly like, I when we say, like, walk a mile in my shoes, or try to understand your patient, it's, to me, those are hollow platitudes. It's like, how do you do that? I don't know what it's like to be, I don't know, like, random, uh, struggling population, third world country, no running water. Like, I don't know that life, but I can try to maybe sympathize a little bit, and adjust my lens to see maybe how they see it, and then also to accept and relinquish the fact that, like, I might not, the way I see it may not always be right for everyone.
right. Well, and that's another part of this too, is that to kind of also look at yourself and just say, am I, bringing in opinions that are swaying this, right? Or am I, like, am I coming into this with an open mind? And one thing I'll say too is that you have to make sure you're not bringing in other things to this, right? Like, so maybe you're
Baggage.
having maybe you're having a
Yes.
bad day already, right? Maybe something else happened that morning, and then you're going into this conversation still thinking about that other conversation, and then the emotions from there are also adding to this. So you have to, that's the point about kind of clearing your mindset. Like, you have to just sort of swipe the slate clean and say, okay, I'm going
Yeah.
to start fresh with this one. I mean, I think back to when I was, full-time clinical, the kids were really little, working 12-hour shifts in the hospital. And I would drive home, and I would, sometimes, like, if it was a rough day at work and there was a lot in my mind, like, I would sit in the garage for maybe a minute or two and sort of
Girl,
reset my mind
I
and say,
still
okay,
do.
okay, now I'm going to go into mommy mode, right? Like, I'm going to walk into the
Yeah.
house and I'm going to be happy, because I am happy to see them. And they don't need the baggage of my day, on them. So,
Yeah.
and to your point about it doesn't always have to be, oh, like, we're all friends and all these things. I mean, sometimes you agree to disagree, right? Like, if you can't get to a conclusion, sometimes you kind of cordially say, okay, well, it looks like we're not going to really get past this right now. So how are we going to work together moving forward, knowing that, right? Like, sometimes that's
Yeah.
what happens. It's not always that everybody agrees on everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. And your comment about the pulling into the garage made me giggle, because I swear, I pull in and I'm like, like,
yeah.
I have this moment of reset. And it's like, again, to our podcast in the previous episode about just work-life balance, trying to decompress, whatever. But it sometimes you have to leave it in the car, or sometimes you have
Yeah.
to leave it in the office, or sometimes you have to leave it at the hospital. Sometimes you have to leave it wherever you leave it. And you can't, morally align with someone whose morals don't align with you. That's okay. I think it's just the effort that you make to try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Well, and try to
That's
put
more
yourself on
important
their
to me.
shoes. Yeah. To understand their
Yeah.
perspective.
And like, I think we say that thing, like, we say that, nuance. It's like, put myself in your shoes, or walk a mile in my shoes, or we talk about that, but it's like, what does that mean if we really think about it? I can do my best to try to see it from April Burke's perspective, but I don't live April Burke's life. So I can see, what, 50% of it, 60% of it. That's it. Um, it's the effort that I put into as a clinician to try to understand what's important to April,
Yeah.
and truly putting aside what I think is best based on my moral ethics, like, how my life was built, which doesn't make it right. It just makes it what's familiar,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, I mean, it's just something that has to happen over time as you practice, like, because it's not something that can be taught. It's
Yeah.
something that you have to be involved in and really practice. And so my advice, and I said this in the blog too, like, embrace those opportunities, right? Like when I have trainees, I start little, like with them, like when they're, I give them topics to go look up and say, come back to me tomorrow and present on it. And they'll present, all these very technical, here's the signs and symptoms and, and then so when they're done, I say to them, all right, now tell me, like I'm a patient in layman's terms so I can understand what you're saying, because that's not something
so
that
hard.
we're like innately taught to do, right? Like that's not, we don't practice that during school. We're, we learn all of the facts. And so we don't get to practice doing that. So I say, we do that. And then if there is a difficult conversation or a family meeting that we're going to have, I bring them into the room, right? So that they can see it happening. And so, if you have mentors that can help teach you, or you can watch them in these conversations, like, just soak that time up and embrace all of those opportunities, because you will learn from them and they will come comfortable or after a while.
Well, I actually think this was like great dialogue, April. I think we could talk days, years about the subject, and we'll probably evolve, and possibly next year we'll be doing a podcast that's saying something completely different. But I think, like, for purposes of this, I think this is great beginnings. So if you guys, any of our listeners, have feedback, please, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can reach out to us at oncallpodcast@soundphysicians.com, or you can engage with us on social media at On Call with April and Alicia on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear anything you have to share.
Yeah, or any ideas for next topics. We would love to hear that as well. But until next time, you guys stay well, and we'll stay on call.